In this week's video, I'm going to show you how you can turn a store-bought pineapple into a pineapple plant that you can add to your houseplant collection or even grow outdoors if you're in the right climate. So I'm going to show you 3 different methods of how you can propagate the tops, one of which will help you get more propagations from a single fruit. Now this was trending a few years ago, but have you actually tried it? It's incredibly easy and cheap to do so, plus there is a really high success rate. So this is when I decided to do it with this plant. I've actually got 2 because I propagated the tops of 2 pineapples. So this is about 2 years old and it is quite a large plant. And the great thing about these is you can actually get fruit from them too. With the right conditions, they can grow pineapples, which you can eat, or you could leave it on the plant as an aesthetic detail. If you didn't want it for the fruit, you could just want it for this really striking, spiky foliage if you wanted something a little bit more unusual in the plant collection, and one that you've got the satisfaction of knowing you've grown it yourself from something that would usually be wasted after you've eaten the fruit. Now I've seen a few different methods for propagating pineapples, and while the process is generally the same, there are some variations with some of the steps depending on preference. So whether you choose to use water or soil, whether you let them callus over before you put them in whatever medium you're using or not, there are some pros and cons to doing so. However, it really is a preference as to what you do. So I'll share what I did with these which were successful, as well as some of the other methods that you could try or variations that you could try to possibly increase your chances of success. It seems like pineapples do really want to propagate, so I'm sure if you give it a go, you won't be disappointed. So as always, there are a few things that you need. First, obviously, being the pineapple, and you can pick these up, as I said, quite cheaply from your grocery store. Just try and find a fresh pineapple, check the fruit is fresh, so that hopefully the top would be fresh. But then also just look at the leaves. There might be some damage and there can be a little bit of discoloration, depending on how long they've maybe been in the box or on display. But what you can check for is general health of the plant, but also the centre of the crown on top. That's where most of the new leaves will be coming from. So you just want to check that they look healthy, that maybe there are new leaves on the way, and you can give them a gentle tug as well. So if any of the plant is maybe going rotten and it's maybe not as fresh as it should be, some of the leaves might actually pull through or pull out. But if they stay put and it looks green and it looks relatively healthy, then it should be a good top to try and propagate. So I'll show you how to take that cutting in just a second. So in order to take the top of the pineapple off, you can just twist and tug it, which I'll show you in just a moment. Alternatively, you can choose to cut it, so you'll need a sharp and clean knife. If you are using the method for multiple propagations, then you will need a large sharp knife in order to do that. Then if you're using the water method, you'll of course need water in a clear container, and for this, because the pineapple top is quite wide, ideally you want one with a wide opening, but one that's maybe quite shallow so that only the base of the pineapple goes in the water, but the sides will then help keep the pineapple top upright when it's in the water. And then lastly, if you're using the soil method and just generally to pot on once it's got roots, you will need a pot with some well draining soil. So now that we've got all of that, let's actually take the top of the pineapple off. So here's one of the pineapples. This one looks like it has been bashed about a little bit in the box, in transit maybe. So there is a little bit of discoloration to the end of some of the leaves, but the centre looks really healthy and lots of new leaves in there, so I'm not too worried about that. So in order to take the top off, as I said, you can just twist and pull it. So hopefully this goes to plan while we're filming. Just be careful, some of the leaves can be a little bit spiky and sharp, and it really depends on the size of pineapple that you've got as to how easy this will be. But you should be able to just grip the top around the base, grip the pineapple so that you can twist them against each other and twist and pull. So I might need to do this if I step back so I can hold it against my body, just to give me some extra strength hopefully to do this. And that has now just twisted free. Thankfully, hopefully not embarrassed myself on the video by not being able to do that. And as you can see, there's the pineapple top cleanly coming away from the pineapple. There's a little bit of fruit on the end which we'll need to trim off because we obviously don't want that to go bad and then rot the rest of the plant. And here we've got the rest of the fruit which I'll then prep and eat later. So if you didn't want to pull the top off but instead use a knife, that's really simple. You would just cut it in the same sort of place, right below the greenery and as close to the fruit as possible, and then just cut that across. And that will obviously give you a cleaner cut, but if there is any fruit left on the bottom of the greenery, just like we'll do with the other one, we can tidy that up in a second. So now for the next step of preparing the top to go in the medium of our choice, whether it's water or soil, what I'm going to do is just cut this little bit of fruit, this point of fruit that was still on the pineapple top. I'm going to cut that right to the base of the greenery, so we'll get a nice clean cut on that. So I'm just going to step out of shot as I do that. So I've just cut off that last little bit of fruit on there as close as I could to the greenery. So we've got a nice clean cut there, and I've started to take off some of the leaves. So this next step is a little bit manual, and all you need to do is start peeling back the leaves and removing them from the central part of the pineapple top. So this is really easy to do. Just peel the leaves back on themselves and twist them to the side, and they just rip off. You will notice that they grow in a way where they almost grow in layers. So you might find you need to get the bottommost layer off first before you can get the others. Or if you are maybe a little bit rougher, got a bit of brute force, then you can just tear them off in handfuls. But you do want to be careful not to damage the main stem in the center, or at least not too much, because that's where all of the little roots or root nodes are waiting to grow and help the top propagate. Now, depending on the size of the pineapple top that you've got and the state of the leaves, you might choose to take off more leaves than I have, but all you need to do is just expose a bit of the central part of the pineapple top. And what you should see is little brown growths, or what look like little roots or root nodes, which have been hiding between the leaves and between the layers, and that's what's going to help to produce roots and propagate the top of our pineapple. So if I bring this a little bit closer so that you can see what I'm talking about, just in case you haven't seen this before, you'll see those little brown growths in there hiding between where the leaves were, and that is what's going to produce our roots. So now we can put this into our growing medium whenever we're deciding to use, and this is where things start to vary a little bit, so you can pick whichever method is your preference. So if you were to put it straight in soil or water, that should be fine. That's exactly what I've done with the ones I've got that were successful. Now, if you were to do that, of course you've got a raw edge there, so there is a risk that if there's any nastiness in the soil or water, then that could get in there and it could increase the chances of rot or something going wrong. So I have also seen that these have been left for a few days, just like you would with a succulent. If you were maybe propagating echeveria, for example, you leave the leaves on the side to callus over before you then put them on the soil. So you can do exactly the same with this. Leave it for a few days, up to a week, until this is just dried and calloused over, and then that should help protect it from anything else in the soil and maybe increase your chance of success from avoiding it from any rot or anything like that. And then again, you would just put it in the water or soil, that whichever method you are using. You can also choose to use a rooting aid if you wish to. So if you were to use something like cinnamon, which is antimicrobial, or aloe vera, for example, which is both antimicrobial and should have plant hormones in it, or you could just use a store-bought rooting aid if you decided to. If not, you can just plant them up as they are. And again, that's exactly what I've done with this. No rooting aid, and it was fine. So here's the pineapple top that I've got. If I just grab my water first of all, and again, as I said, if you have the right sort of size and shape container, the pineapple top should just sit in the water nicely and stay upright. So this is just a dip jar, like the dip that you would have with things like tortillas or chips or crisps or something like that. And that is the perfect size jar for a pineapple top propagation. And I'll bring that closer just so that you can see that again, just so that the bottom of the pineapple is in the water. So you should start to see clear roots after about 7 days, and of course the longer you leave it, the more roots that you'll get, and you'll really start to see them clustering around the base of the pineapple top. So once they're about 1 to 2 centimeters long, you can then pot it up in some well-draining potting mix and keep the soil moist. So that will just help to encourage the continued growth of those roots until you've got an established pineapple plant. Now, while these can root very quickly, you do want to keep an eye on the health of the propagation. So you want to make sure that the base of the pineapple top stays the right colour. So it's currently this sort of yellowy to green colour. If it starts to go a darker shade of brown or even black, then that's a sign that it's gone rotten and it's not a successful propagation. Equally, the central part of the crown is where the leaves will be produced. So long as there are maybe new leaves being produced and they're still green, and even with the tug test they stay in place, then that's a really good sign that you've still got a healthy propagation. Don't worry too much about the outer leaves or lower leaves. Like I said, they can be damaged in transit. They might start to discolour if the plant isn't maybe taking up enough to look after all of the leaves on the pineapple top. You can just remove those when it comes to potting them up later to tidy it up before we get to that stage. So long as the middle bit is healthy and the base is healthy, then just be patient and you should have hopefully a successful propagation. So I've got a new pot of soil, and this is just a mix of compost, perlite and coconut coir. So it's a well draining mix, and that should be perfect for the pineapple. Now I've just used a spray bottle to add a bit of moisture to the mix, and then we can put our pineapple top in and start off the propagation if we were using the soil method. So all you need to do is make a dip in the centre of the soil, just deep enough to cover the bottom of the base of the pineapple top that we've exposed where all of those little roots were, and just enough so that it stays upright when it's in the soil. Now, just for illustration purposes, I've got the one that I've just put in water that I'm just going to show you how to put it in here as well in the soil, depending on which method you were using. So all you need to do, as I said, place the base into the pot so that only that lower part of it is covered. You don't really want to be covering lots of the leaves, and then all you need to do is just firm the soil around it so that it actually stays upright. So I'm just going to go around the base and just make sure that it is all around that exposed area where all of the little roots are going to grow. Then once you've finished firming the soil, if the pineapple top is unstable, you can use something like small garden canes or even chopsticks, then place them around the top in the soil, and that'll just hold it upright and keep it stable until it starts to develop roots, and then it should be anchored in the soil itself. So then you want to maintain moisture in the soil, not wet soil, just moisture to help prompt that root growth and keep the top healthy. So you can water at the soil level, or you can also water from the top into the central crown of the pineapple, and then that water will filter down through the layers, and of course that will then be targeting all of the central, I guess, column, the bit in the middle of the pineapple top where all of those little roots are that we want to prompt growth of. So I actually use the top watering method for these, and I've got successful propagations from these, but of course pick whichever method of watering you think is best. And just like with the water method, keep an eye on the health of the propagation. So while you can't see that roots are being developed because it's in the soil, you can keep an eye on the stability of the plant. As I said before, once the roots are established in the soil, it will be better anchored and more stable. But also keep an eye, as I said with the water method, on the top of the plant. Is it still developing new leaves? Is it green and healthy in the centre of the plant? Then that's a really good sign, and just be patient and wait for new growth. Just like I said before as well, any discoloration or bad leaves around the side, you can just trim off if you need to. And then once the plant starts to become more established, the leaves will get much longer, just like this one, and it will really start to spread out. Now I'm going to show you the method where you can get multiple propagations from one pineapple top. So I've just run downstairs to get a cutting board and a sharper knife, which I think I'll need as opposed to the one that I had earlier. So I've got a different pineapple here, which I'll be using for this one. So all I'm going to do is take off the top, just like I did before, and then I'll show you how we cut it down into the different segments. So there we go, just as I had before, I've now got a pineapple top with the lower leaves removed to expose where those little roots are. And what I'm going to do now is actually cut this down. So I might not be able to do this on camera, as I'm going to need to do it on the desk. So all I'm going to do with this is use the knife to cut it in half, straight down the middle. So here are the two halves of that pineapple top. It did take a little bit more effort than I was expecting to actually cut through it, even with a sharp knife. So if you are doing this, just be really careful and bear in mind that you might need a little bit of elbow grease or brute force to actually get through the pineapple top. So as you can see, that's directly through the middle and relatively clean cut. But what I'm going to do again now is cut this in half one more time. So I'm going to take one of these halves, or both of them, and cut them in half directly down the middle again, much in the same way, so that then I'll get quarters of the pineapple top. So I'm going to cut that now and then come back to you with the quarters. So these are the 4 quarters of the pineapple top. As you've seen, they've just been halved and halved again, so we've got almost equal quarters. And don't worry about what these look like. These are not going to be your pineapple plant. Unlike the full top when we do the propagation, that then becomes the pineapple plant. These in themselves are not going to be the pineapple plant. What should happen with these is when we plant these up, these should then actually produce separate offshoots or pineapple plants off the base of these. So you could get 1, you could get 2, depending on how successful they are. But this in itself is not going to be the plant, and this will eventually either die back, or you could cut it off and remove it when it does have an established offshoot coming off of it. So with each of these, there's one more step to prepare them, and then we can plant them up. So I'll just show you that next. Now when you cut these down, you might notice that they do lose some of the leaves, particularly in the centre as you make the cut. And that's nothing to worry about. We're actually going to remove some of those now. And you will notice when you look at these, there's almost a solid piece of stem at the bottom, or solid piece of stalk at the bottom, and then you can see exactly where all of the leaves start to come together and join that bit of the base at the bottom. So we want to remove these middle leaves at that point, so we've almost got like an inset bit where those have been removed. So if I bring that back, and I'll see if I can do it without using the knife, but I might need to use the knife to cut that out. But you might be able to just pull those out, oh, just like that, nice and easy, and just slide some of those central leaves out. So I think I'll take that one last large one off, and then that's all I need to plant. So I've got a few leaves on there still. I've got the base bit with the little root nodes, or roots that I've started to develop on there, and there's that little bit of inset on the base where I've just removed those central leaves, and that can now be planted. So I'm going to do exactly the same with this one, and you'll see that it's already helping me out by those central leaves just falling straight out there. So I'm just going to pick those off, and that's exactly what I need for planting. Got the inset, got the bit with the roots, and there's still some leaves on there. So I'm going to do the other two and then we'll pop them up. So here are the 4 quarters all prepared and ready to plant. So you can plant these as they are, or as I said before, you might leave them a day or two to callus over and then plant them, as we have cut them up quite a bit. And with these, because they're not maybe as straightforward as just planting the whole top of the pineapple, I think these would benefit from some rooting aid, at least something that's antimicrobial, just to stop, again, any nastiness affecting them when they are in the soil. So I actually had an aloe vera plant near me when I was making the video, so I'm just going to take some of the gel, which is both antimicrobial and should contain plant hormones, and just add that on and rub that on to the base of these where the roots are going to develop, and on some of those open cuts, just so that it hopefully stops any nastiness causing these to rot. And you can do this with obviously any rooting hormone that you might have. Cinnamon is a good antimicrobial, but also store-bought ones will have various different properties that can help your plants hopefully have a higher success rate, or your propagations have a higher success rate. So once I've added the aloe vera, we'll put these in the soil. Actually, on second thought, as I was doing that, because I've got 4 of them, I'll use the aloe vera on 2 of them and plant them straight away, and then for these 2 I'll just let them callus over and then plant them up, so then I can see if there's any differences between letting them callus over or not when it comes to the health of the propagations. And then when it comes to potting them up, this is just the same as what we did with the whole top. So we're just going to make a dip in the soil and then just place the piece of pineapple in the soil deep enough so that the actual bit with the roots on is going to be covered. And you might need to go a little bit deeper into the soil on this occasion just to make sure that it stays stable once it's in there. And you can see that one's staying upright, which is great. And then I'm just going to do this other one as well. So these ones are the ones with the aloe vera gel on, and then like I said, once the other ones have had a couple of days to callus over, I'll then pop them up on the other side of this pot or a separate pot, and then we can see how they get on. So again, just dip in the soil, place the plant, and then firm the soil around it, which is quite difficult to do one-handed, but of course if you've got it on a desk or a table or something like that, it will be a lot easier than trying to hold the pot in one hand and do the planting with the other. So there we go, there's our 2 propagations from the 1 pineapple top, but we've got another 2 to add in a couple of days. So which of those methods would you prefer if you were propagating pineapples? Would you let them callus over first or plant them straight away? Would you plant the top as a whole or cut them down into multiple propagations? Let me know in the comments below what would be your preferred method, and if you have tried it in the past, what methods did you use and were they successful? I'd love to know, as it's always good to know the best method to increase our chances of propagation success. So if you haven't, hopefully this has inspired you to give it a go. So next time you're in the grocery store and pineapples are on offer, then pick one up cheaply and give it a try. You've got nothing to lose. As I said, you're using the waste part of the pineapple and you can still enjoy the fruit, whatever the outcome is with your propagations, but hopefully it will be a success. If you have found this video useful, then consider subscribing, as I'll have new videos every week on plant related topics. I've got loads more on the channel and I'll link my previous video at the end if you'd like to watch that next. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments below and I'll respond to everyone. And as always, thank you for watching Grow Your Wellbeing.